Burkina Faso, once known as the land of upright people, was holding its breath. It had seen decades of instability, military coups, foreign interference, tribal divisions, and the slow erosion of trust in power. People had grown tired of promises, weary of slogans, skeptical of every new name in office. But something had shifted. In 2022, a young military officer named Ibrahim Traoré rose like a storm, bold, direct, unapologetic. He didn't come in through polished speeches or international handshakes. He arrived with boots in the dirt and conviction in his eyes. He was not perfect, but he was different. At just 34 years old, Traoré became the youngest leader on the continent. He declared that Burkina Faso would no longer bow to outside control. No more foreign military bases pretending to bring peace. No more mining contracts draining the land while villages starved. No more silence. For the first time in years, people had hope. But hope, like fire, draws attention, especially in a region where enemies don't always wear uniforms. Across the northern provinces, whispers turned into warnings. Armed groups, backed by forces both foreign and unseen, were making moves. Ambushes increased. Roads became kill zones. The line between ally and enemy blurred. Traoré's advisors urged caution. They told him not to travel. They begged him to rule from the capital, to broadcast from a distance, to lead through commands, not presence. But that wasn't his way. "I lead from the ground," he said. "If the people suffer in the dust, I will walk in it with them." So he did. On a dry morning in February, the presidential convoy was scheduled to pass through a rural province in the north, an area known for danger and silence. The roads were dusty. The trees leaned low. The heat pressed like a weight. People gathered in small clusters, eyes shaded by hands, waiting to catch a glimpse of the man who dared speak differently. Among them was a boy, just 12 years old, skin darkened by the sun, sandals worn thin, eyes sharp with the kind of awareness life teaches in hard places. His name was Oumar. To most, he was no one. Just a goat herder, a village child, one of the many. But that morning, Oumar noticed something others missed. As he led his goats near the path, he saw them. Men, strangers. Too still, too alert. They weren't part of the village. They wore mismatched gear, scarves covering their faces, rifles barely hidden beneath loose cloth. They moved like wolves pretending to be sheep. They didn't look at him, but they were watching. Not the people, not the goats, the road, more importantly, the place where the convoy would slow down near a curve. It didn't take much for Oumar to understand. This wasn't a drill. It wasn't paranoia. This was an ambush, and the president was minutes away. He froze. He felt the blood drain from his arms. For a moment, his legs didn't move. He could have run the other way. He could have hidden behind the rocks, like any scared child might. But something deeper stirred. Something his mother had once told him during a thunderstorm when he cried in the dark. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Oumar. It's walking forward while still shaking. He turned. And he ran, not away from danger, but straight toward it. Oumar's sandals barely held together as he ran. Every step kicked up a burst of dry earth that clung to his legs like ash. His breath came in sharp gulps, the kind that burned the chest. But he didn't slow down. He couldn't. Ahead, a shimmer on the horizon. The convoy, black SUVs, armored military trucks, and the flicker of the Burkina Faso flag. It moved steadily, unaware of the trap lying in wait. His mind raced faster than his feet. Would they believe him? Would they hear him in time? Would he be mistaken for a threat? He had no way of knowing. The only thing he knew was that if he didn't warn them, someone would die. The curve in the road was just minutes ahead. That was where the ambushers were hiding, and the convoy would slow like always, making them vulnerable. He gritted his teeth. Pain shot up through his ankles as a thorn lodged deep into his heel. He stumbled, fell, but didn't stop. He ripped it out, ignoring the blood, and pushed forward. Every second counted. The dust cloud grew thicker. He could now hear the low hum of engines, the clicking of wheels over loose stone, the soft roar of military tires chewing up the road. He waved his arms. He screamed, "Stop! It's a trap!" No one heard, so he screamed louder, this time switching from his native dialect to French. "Ambush! In the trees! It's a trap!" The lead vehicle suddenly slowed. From its window, a soldier raised his weapon toward the boy. "Hold your fire!" Someone yelled. Oumar was close enough now for them to see the panic on his face, the fear, the urgency. A soldier jumped from the truck and rushed toward him. "Who are you? What's going on?" Oumar tried to catch his breath, pointing frantically. Behind him. "Men. In the trees. Guns. They're going to shoot." The soldier didn't hesitate. He slammed his hand on his radio. "Convoy halt. Possible ambush. Coordinates 17 to go 14. Now." Engines groaned to a halt. Then, gunfire erupted. From behind the trees, muzzle flashes lit up the bush. The sound was thunder, controlled chaos, echoes of war tearing through the dry air, and because of Oumar, the bullets missed their mark. The first round of gunfire sprayed too early. Had Oumar been just 30 seconds slower, the ambushers would have opened fire at close range, shattering windshields, striking vehicles, taking lives. But now they were exposed. The convoy braced, soldiers scattering into flanking positions, returning fire with calculated bursts. Dust rose in great waves, swallowing vision. The trees trembled with explosions. Shouts rang out in 3 languages. The attackers hadn't expected a delay. They hadn't expected the element of surprise to be turned against them. They certainly hadn't expected a child. From beneath one of the vehicles, Oumar curled into a tight ball, his arms over his head. He could feel the ground tremble beneath his ribs. He could smell the smoke, taste the fear. But he didn't cry. He just prayed. Inside the lead truck, President Traoré gripped the door handle. His advisors urged him to stay down. "Sir, we don't know how many. Could be 15. Could be 50. "It doesn't matter," he replied. "Get the boy." The president peered through a slit in the armored window. He saw the soldiers forming a wall of defense. He saw them advance. He also saw Oumar, covered in dirt, blood on one ankle, eyes wide with the weight of what he had just done. "He warned us?" Traoré asked. "Yes, sir. Seconds before the first shot." The president didn't speak, but something changed in his face. After 15 minutes, the gunfire stopped. The attackers had retreated, fewer than anticipated, perhaps only 6 or 7. They'd vanished into the hills, leaving behind empty cartridges and footprints in the soil. Silence returned. Only then did the soldiers move to the boy. He was pulled gently from beneath the truck, eyes still wide, trembling now. Not from fear, but from the weight of adrenaline fading. The commanding officer knelt beside him. "What's your name?" "Oumar," he whispered. "You saved us, Oumar." He didn't reply. He just looked at the trucks, then at the road, then at the curve, just yards away, and he understood exactly how close death had come. But he had outrun it. The convoy remained still, the air tense with the scent of smoke and dust. Soldiers held their ground, scanning the horizon, fingers still brushing triggers. But inside the armored SUV, something unexpected happened. President Ibrahim Traoré opened his door. His security detail rushed forward. "Mr. President, please, stay inside until we clear the area." But he waved them off. "I will not hide from the boy who saved my life." Boots crunching on the gravel, the president approached Oumar. The crowd of soldiers parted to make way. All eyes turned to the boy, now seated on the roadside, his knees drawn to his chest, his arms wrapped around them. Traoré knelt before him. Oumar looked up, dirt streaking his face, one sandal gone, his wounded heel still bleeding. Are you Oumar? The president asked gently. The boy nodded slowly. Traoré placed a hand on his shoulder. Firm, steady. You didn't have to run toward us. You could have saved yourself. Why didn't you? Oumar blinked, then looked away. His voice, barely a whisper. Because, if you died, more people would die after. And my mother said that protecting one life can save many. For a few long seconds, the president said nothing. Then quietly he replied, Your mother raised a lion. A soldier stepped forward with a bottle of water and a bandage kit. As Oumar drank, Traoré stood and turned to his men. This boy is not a civilian today. He's a soldier of spirit, an example of what loyalty looks like in flesh and blood. They saluted, not out of obligation, but respect. And in that moment, on that dusty road, Oumar became more than a child. He became a symbol. The convoy continued, but with a difference. Oumar wasn't left behind. President Traoré insisted the boy ride beside him, not in the back of a truck, but in the seat next, to his own. The convoy advanced cautiously, windows still cracked, nerves still raw. But inside the lead vehicle, a strange silence settled. Oumar sat quietly, occasionally glancing out the window, hands clenched in his lap. He had never ridden in a car like this before. He had never seen a dashboard glow or leather this smooth. Traoré didn't speak much. He simply sat beside the boy, occasionally offering a nod of comfort. You did something brave today, he said. It wasn't brave, Oumar replied. It was just right. The president turned toward him with a half smile. Brave is doing what's right when it might cost you your life. That's exactly what you did. Oumar looked down. I was scared. Good. That means you understood the risk. They drove in silence for a while. Outside, the sun dropped lower on the horizon. Villages flashed past, homes of mud and thatch, children running barefoot through courtyards, women drawing water from wells. But in every passing group, people looked up in awe. Word had already traveled ahead. They had heard, the boy who saved the president is riding in his car. No cameras. No podium. Just a boy, a president, and the heavy silence between survival and sacrifice. For Oumar, it was a blur. For Traoré, it was a moment he would never forget. By nightfall, the convoy reached the edge of Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. For Oumar, the city felt like another planet. The lights hurt his eyes. Cars honked and zipped past like insects. Buildings stretched up into the sky. He clutched the armrest of the president's SUV, his small fingers trembling, his heart overwhelmed not by fear, but by unfamiliarity. This wasn't like his village. There were no goats, no dusty footpaths, no rusted tin roofs. But as they approached the presidential palace, soldiers in clean uniforms lined the gate in attention. They saluted the convoy as it passed through. Oumar's eyes widened. A marble fountain sparkled under golden lights. Flags waved in the wind. Massive wooden doors opened as the convoy came to a halt. He didn't expect to be ushered inside. He thought they would let him sleep. In a corner, feed him, then send him home. But no. President Traoré personally walked him up the steps, hand gently on his back. You'll stay in the guest wing tonight, he said. Guest wing? Oumar echoed. You saved a president. You deserve more than a tent. Inside, he was greeted by palace attendants who offered him water, warm towels, and a change of clothes. The boy who spent his life in bare feet now walked on polished marble floors. The next morning, Oumar woke to the sound of footsteps outside his door. When he emerged, a neatly dressed aide was waiting for him. The president would like to see you, Oumar. He nodded silently. Minutes later, Oumar found himself standing in a grand meeting room with glass walls, long tables, and heavy flags. Across from him sat President Traoré, this time dressed in a clean white shirt and military cap. There were journalists setting up cameras. Oumar froze. "Don't worry," Traoré said gently. "Just speak the truth. Nothing more." Then the press conference began. The cameras rolled. Reporters scribbled. The room was thick with tension and curiosity. Traoré stood before them all and told the full story of how a 12-year-old Muslim boy had spotted an ambush, risked his life, and saved the head of state. Then he invited Oumar to speak. He stepped forward slowly, hands shaking, voice soft. "I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to say something. If I stayed quiet, people would die." One journalist asked him, "Were you scared?" "Yes," he replied, "but I was more scared of doing nothing." Another asked, "What do you want now? Fame? Money?" Oumar looked down, then simply said, "I just want to go back to school." The room went silent. Then applause broke out, not just polite clapping, but full, heartfelt applause. And somewhere in the back of that room, a story was being written, one that would travel far beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. That night, he was given a private room, clean sheets, a soft bed, warm soup. It was all so strange. He lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a child who had just crossed a line he couldn't come back from, and deep in his bones. He knew tomorrow would change everything. Within 24 hours, Oumar's story exploded across West Africa. It wasn't just on television, it was everywhere. Social media feeds filled with clips from the press conference. Radio stations replayed his soft words over and over. "I was more scared of doing nothing." His name trended in 4 countries. Hashtags appeared in 3 languages. Schools shared his story during morning assemblies. Teachers called him the child with the lion's heart. Even in neighboring nations, people posted tributes. Not, "All heroes wear boots, some run barefoot." A child reminded us what courage looks like. But for Oumar, the palace was quiet. He didn't use social media. He didn't understand hashtags. He sat in a quiet corner of the guest wing, reading a children's book someone had left on the bed. His bandaged foot ached. His mind drifted back to his goats, the dusty fields, his mother's cooking. He didn't feel like a legend. He felt tired. President Traoré called for him again that evening. They sat under the palace's courtyard tree. No cameras, no advisors, just 2 people. "Do you understand what's happening?" the president asked. Oumar shook his head. "People are watching you now, listening to you." "Why?" "Because you reminded them of something they forgot. That bravery comes from the heart, not rank." Oumar blinked at the stars. "I didn't want to be a reminder. I just didn't want anyone to die." Traoré smiled gently. "That's why you're a reminder worth listening to." The letter that changed everything. The next morning, as Oumar was eating breakfast on the balcony, a woman in a navy blue uniform approached him with a small envelope. "This came in for you, young man." He turned the envelope in his hands. It was thick paper, his name written in elegant handwriting. He opened it carefully. Inside, a letter written in French. It read, "Dear Oumar, I am a teacher in Mali. I watched your speech with my students. Many of them cried. Many of them stood up and clapped. We now begin every morning by saying your name. We call it the Oumar moment. You showed us that children are not too small to save lives. Thank you. Madame Diarra, School of Timbuktu." Oumar stared at the letter for a long time. His hands trembled, not out of fear, but because, for the first time, he realized what a voice could do. He had never thought his words would cross borders, that his name would be said in schools miles away, that another child, somewhere else, might choose to speak up because he did. He folded the letter carefully, slipped it into his pocket, and quietly whispered to himself, "I'll never waste a moment." While the world praised her son, Oumar's mother sat quietly in their village courtyard. She had no television, no internet, only word of mouth, and the word was everywhere. Villagers came by with congratulations, some offering gifts, a basket of yams, a bolt of cloth, a carved walking stick. Elders from the mosque called her Mère du Courageux. But she didn't smile at first. She waited. She waited until the old pickup truck sent by the president finally rolled into the village, kicking up dust, its doors flying open, and her son stepped out wearing clothes she had never seen before. Was taller, tired, changed, but he was still hers. She opened her arms, and he collapsed into them without saying a word. They wept together, not because of what had happened, but because he had come home, alive. That evening, as fireflies rose from the ground, Oumar sat beside her and told her everything. The ambush, the president, the cameras, the letter from Mali. She listened without interrupting. Then she placed her hand on his head and said, "I prayed that you would be a good man. I didn't ask God to make you famous, but I think he gave me both." Days passed. Oumar remained in the village, even as officials urged him to return to the city for interviews, ceremonies, opportunities. He stayed, but he wasn't idle. He visited the village school, barely a building, more like a room with dirt floors, cracked windows, and broken desks. The teacher had tears in her eyes when he walked in. "You came," she whispered. Oumar stood at the front of the class, barefoot again, a chalk stick in his hand. The students stared at him like he was a movie star. He didn't give a speech. He asked a question. "What would you do if you saw something wrong? Would you speak, even if it scared you?" The room went still. One girl raised her hand. "I'd say something." Another boy nodded. "Me too." Oumar smiled. "Then you're braver than most." He didn't want to be worshipped. He wanted others to believe they could be brave too. Traoré's return. President Traoré didn't forget. A month after the ambush, he returned, not with a camera crew or motorcade, but with a few close aides and a single black SUV. He met Oumar and his family under the baobab tree near their home. "I owe you more than words," he said. "So let me offer something real." He handed Oumar a thick envelope. Inside were documents, a scholarship that would fund Oumar's education through university, anywhere in the world. Tuition, travel, books, clothes, everything. Oumar looked at his mother, then back at the president. "I will study. I will return. I will help." Traoré smiled. "That's all I ask." And in that moment, it wasn't just a gift. It was a contract between two generations. The day Oumar left for school in the city, the entire village gathered. Some brought food for the road, others simply stood with pride in their eyes. His teacher wept quietly. Children hugged his waist and asked when he'd be back. He had never been this far from home. He boarded a white minibus marked with the presidential seal. Inside were books, a new backpack, and clean uniforms. He sat beside a kind-faced aide, who told him about the boarding school in Ouagadougou. It had electricity, real classrooms, and students from all over the country. For Oumar, it felt like crossing into another world. But he carried the dust of his village in his heart. And he promised himself, "I will learn, I will grow, I will return." At school, everything was different. The hallways buzzed with chatter. The lights never flickered. The desks were smooth and new. Teachers spoke in clear, practiced tones. Some students were skeptical of him at first. They had heard the story, the boy who saved the president. But they didn't know him until he started to shine. He studied harder than anyone, asked questions, took notes in careful handwriting. He stayed after class to help others. He tutored younger students. He joined the debate team. His teachers began calling him the silent storm. He didn't brag. He didn't correct others. He just led, with quiet consistency. 2 years later, Oumar stood on a stage at the National Youth Summit. He had grown taller, stronger, more confident, but still wore the same soft eyes. The hall was packed. The theme, youth and leadership. When he stepped up to the podium, the room fell silent. My name is Oumar. I am the son of a farmer and the student of my mother's prayers. I did not save a president to become famous. I spoke because silence kills. You do not need to wear a suit to lead. You do not need an army to fight. You just need to care, more than you fear. When he finished, they stood for 5 minutes. Some cried, and Oumar bowed, not as a hero, but as a servant of truth. Oumar never forgot his village. During school breaks, he returned to help rebuild. He organized book donations. He worked with government officials to improve the local water system. He brought volunteers to clean the school and plant trees. Each time he arrived, children ran to meet him. Each time he left, they begged him to return, and he always did, because the village wasn't just his past, it was his compass. One day, President Traoré invited Oumar back to the palace, not as a boy, but as a guest of honor. They walked through the rose garden behind the main hall. No cameras, just 2 people. "You've done more than we imagined," the president said. Oumar smiled. "You believed in me when I was just a scared child with a dusty face." Traoré looked at him with pride. "You were never just a child. You were the reminder we all needed." They stood in silence. 2 men, years apart in age, bound by a single moment of courage. As Oumar grew, his influence spread. He was invited to speak in Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria. He sat on panels, met students, led youth workshops. In each country, someone recognized him. "Aren't you the boy from Burkina Faso? You saved the president, didn't you?" He would smile gently. "I just did what I could." He never let it change him. Fame was never his goal. His mission was always the same, to teach others that their voice mattered. Years later, Oumar stood at the same road where he once ran barefoot to save lives. Now it was paved. Lights had been installed. A school stood nearby. He placed a small plaque into the ground. It read, "In memory of the moment where fear met purpose." Oumar, age 12 children gathered, curious. A boy asked, "Is this where it happened?" Oumar nodded. "Yes, and if I had stayed silent, this road would have been red instead of gold." The boy took his hand. "I want to be brave like you." Oumar smiled. "You already are." Oumar never became a politician. He didn't crave power or wealth. He became a teacher. He opened a leadership academy in his village. Not in the city, but right where his story began. Children from all over Burkina Faso enrolled. Some poor, some displaced, some broken by the world. He taught them all. He told them stories. He taught them how to speak, to listen, to act when no one else would. And on the wall of the academy hung a photo. A small boy covered in dust, shouting toward a convoy. Below it, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear decide." And thus, the boy who saved a president, saved a generation, one voice, one warning, one life-changing decision. Oumar didn't ask to be remembered. He simply refused to stay silent. And because of him, Burkina Faso learned that bravery has no age and legacy has no limit. Subscribe to Modern True Stories for more powerful tales like this.